Batman the Night, issue 7, Chip Zdarsky writing with Carmine DJ Domenico on the art, and this is Bruce back in the US, but not quite Gotham. He's in New York, and he's with Zatara, and he's learning, deception. He's learning, sleight of hand, all that kind of stuff. Because at the start of this issue, it's worth mentioning, Bruce does not know that real magic exists. He kind of discovers that halfway through this issue, when a demon who's been murdering people shows up and tries to take on Zatara. We get kind of young Zatanna, who's like trying to get him to open up, and
establishes that they've got a history in this time, in this world.
Yeah.
Like some versions of Bruce have had this where he has this relationship with Zatanna from a younger age, like the parents are friends, which is kind of what this one's going with.
Yeah.
I'm always open to that.
Some are kind of romantic, like they're not really. I mean, it never really suggests they're ever going to be a thing again, but there might be like a sort of young romance thing there.
There was a teenage fling, usually, sort of thing. Yeah.
Yeah, here, I mean, maybe the teenage fling still happened, but because of the way you talk about, remember when we were kids, blah blah, it kind of feels more like they're cousins. Not by blood, but in terms of
I know what you mean. Like the family friend cousin.
Yeah. Bruce is like testing his. He says he's trying to break the record for holding his breath underwater, and he says he did like for 18 minutes. I'm like, isn't the record like 7 minutes? I feel like that's way over the record.
I don't know what the record is.
I could have swore it was like 7 minutes was the record. Maybe I'm completely wrong.
I mean, it probably is. Oh no, it is not.
Oh, what is it?
This was in a Croatian dude on the 27th of March, 2021. Record of 24 minutes, 37.36 seconds. And that surpassed the previous record by 34 seconds. So the previous record was still over 24 minutes.
How? How? That's like, you could read 2 comics underwater with that type of time. Madness. Anyway,
yeah.
So Zatara's in a bit of a slump. He's drinking a lot, missing his dead wife, all that sort of stuff. When Bruce kind of was admitting some things to Zatanna and Zatara, and he admits more over the course of the issue, where he admits he's on this mission, he's learning all these things. Because Zatara at one point is like, oh, you could be my predecessor, or not my predecessor, my successor. You could be my protege, and you could do stage magic. You could be great. And he's like, no, that's not why I'm learning this. I've got something else in mind. And when he actually says it out loud, and he talks about how he's on this mission, and he doesn't know exactly what it's going to take form as, but he's going to be there to protect people and like seek justice when it needs to be done. Like they kind of criticize him a lot, at least Zatanna does, for not really moving on, and he's still stuck with the death of his parents. And Bruce is like, well, yeah, I'm not ashamed of that. Like, yeah, like I'm not letting them go. I'm keeping them that anger alive, because
he doesn't say all of this to her. Like he says part of it is like, yeah, no,
some of his narration, I think, yeah.
Some of his narration where he's like, no, I need that drive, because that's what keeps me going, and gives me the push to be what I want to do.
Yeah, I enjoyed this issue. I think it's another part of like that, training year, or years, I suppose I should say, of like Bruce becoming Batman. It's not quite as great, I think, as because last issue I thought was the best issue of the whole book so far.
Objectively speaking, that's probably true, but I'm a sucker for this sort of issue.
I think the drama and the psychology of the of the standoff and the shooting and all that stuff last issue was just like, it was like, okay, this is nailing kind of what forms like Bruce's thoughts on a lot of these subjects going forward. It was a really neat way of doing it. This is all perfectly solid stuff, and I had an entertaining time with it.
I love the stuff at the end with him kind of accepting about, okay, this speaking to the dead idea was probably not the right idea.
Yeah, because he still has a book that's about speaking to the dead. Once he knows magic's real, he sees all these real magic books, and he's like, oh, maybe I should learn to do this and speak to my parents.
But then Zatara's like, we got real magic. We can share it. We're just sharing memories. And it just ends with he's going to tell him a story about his parents.
Yeah, I think the most interesting thing about this issue to me is that when he finds out magic is real, within like 2 lines of dialogue, he turns to them and says, "Teach me. I need to be able to do this." And Zatara's like,
perfectly in line with the version of Bruce that we've had so far.
Absolutely. And I totally buy that Bruce at some point when he first knew about magic probably wanted to master it and use it as a tool in his arsenal. But this issue is very much about like, okay, this is why he probably shouldn't do that, and why he was swayed away from it. And of course, it's like, yeah, like and also part of it as well is that when the demon shows up, he's able to sort of take it down. He's like, you know what, it's a demon, but it's still a criminal. Fundamentally, like a lot of my logic and tactics will still work here.
Yeah, when he first sees it, he's kind of terrified because like, what the hell is this?
Yes.
But by the end, he's like, okay, I understand this. I can fight this, even if I'm not the magic user.
There's also a brief moment where he's looking for like wires and projection. Like he's looking for the smoke in the mirrors. He thinks it's not real for a bit. But yeah, it's just this idea that he's immediately tempted to use it as a tool, but then fundamentally, one, he's not really good at it because he can't really like surrender himself to it, because that's how Zatanna describes it, is that you don't surrender yourself to things, you control things, and that's not how magic works. But I think there's also maybe a little bit of like, magic's a lot like a gun in a way. Like if he starts wielding magic, like he will become too powerful and he'll be too, there has to be some kind of limitation. So that in the same way that he gives himself that rule of not killing someone, fundamentally he also has to sort of keep himself away from the magic as well.
Yeah, I really like how Zatara puts it. It's like, hey, you've got to. There's a cost, so you've got to pay something. But the only thing you've got to give is the darkness of what's driving you. If you give that, it's just going to amplify it, and you're kind of going to lose control. And I think by the end of the issue, he kind of realizes that they're saying this with his best interests at heart. They're not trying to just keep the secrets from him. They're like, sure, you could master it. You've got the capability and the willpower to do it, but maybe it's not the best thing, and he comes around to that. And I do really like that stuff. This growth for Bruce in this issue.
Yeah, I will say in a broad sense, I would probably say my preference would be that Bruce doesn't know about anything supernatural until after he's been Batman for a bit. I kind of like the idea that when he gets into just taking on mob bosses and stuff, he is just purely boots on the ground, real life stuff until Superman shows up, and then it's like, oh shit, like
yeah, that's fine. I've seen enough takes of pretty much exactly this where he trains with Zatara as one of his mentors, and kind of learns about this stuff. Then that I'm just used to this angle now. I guess I don't even know. This might even be like the official like canon angle right now, I think.
Yeah, I'm not bothered by it, and it makes enough sense. And like I say, I like what it does with him choosing not to pursue magic. Like it's got some interesting things to say about in the DC universe that he exists in, like why he wouldn't go down these certain paths. But if I was like having my way and I was the one constructing the story in some way, I would probably wait until after he's already been Batman for like a year or two before he encounters either an alien or a magic character or something like that,
I get that. I think for me, I like this one more, not because I want him to, encounter all the supernatural stuff earlier, because I'm not, I also like the idea, let's start low level, but I also really like the, the versions where he has this past history with Zatanna when they're younger, and he's had that training, and the fact that he knows to go and call on Zatanna and that magic's real. By that, that he's got someone to refer to when something first affects Gotham, kind of means implicitly he has to have had some experience with this before to have that knowledge. So it's kind of a trade-off.
Yeah. I think part of me likes the idea that Superman's the first thing he ever sees that's not just normal. He's fought like super villains in the sense that he's fought the Joker by that point. He's maybe he's a character Bane who's enhanced a little bit with drugs, but
you can't really have Clayface then, I guess, until after Superman,
which is
by
fair.
your logic.
Clayface can be later. That's not a big deal, I don't think. But
you can still have Joker, Two-Face, Penguin, Scarecrow.
all those ones. Yeah, I think I like the idea of like Superman, and that's partly why Bruce is so distrusting at first, because he has to really deal with this question of like someone like this with extra powers, like with these abilities exists, and so the idea is like it's just a really pure like dilemma in his head of how to deal with that when the first one he meets is Superman, and obviously is someone who'll become a friend, and then obviously from there it can inform like how he treats things. But as arguably you could also say that if he's encountered a couple of supervillains that have had some powers, that's why he's more distrusting of Superman when he shows up. But it's all just details for.
It's very much kind of just personal preference. There's so many takes and variations on this now that pick your own basically. I don't even know what is officially like quote unquote canon in the current timeline, because it just doesn't matter. Just if you want this version of this, if the Batman the Knight to be your definitive kind of early days Bruce, this basically contradicts like nothing long term. You can have this, like just beat for beat. It can be just this if you wanted to. You can mix them, take bits from this and mix it in with other versions that you like. It all kind of works.
Yeah. It's basically just whoever's writing the current book gets to decide what's in continuity, and then it'll shift and mold as time goes on.
You say that in reality, or at least it should be. It's the whoever's editing the books gets to make those decisions.
True. You know what I mean, though. Like,
yeah. I just don't want to undersell the editorial department. That's kind of part of their responsibility, is that lining up of continuity.
The point is, though, is they change too. So every so often, when it's a new person, things will shift, and you get other priorities. So yeah, but no, it was a solid enough issue. Yeah, it's just
I really liked it, and I actually think Gio Domenico's art, obviously, it's been great the whole book because his art's pretty spectacular. I think when we start getting the magic stuff, where he's kind of got the sigils coming out, it's very Doctor Strange-esque coming out of his hands. I think that stuff looks amazing with the colors, the way it pops. I think it's so different to everything else we've had in this book that it really stood out, and it's really vibrant. I think it just looks amazing.
Yeah. No, good time. The Night's been a very interesting book to read through, where it didn't necessarily start off with like this amazing first. It had an interesting first issue, certainly, but it definitely wasn't this like home run of a thing. And what's funny is I actually said a very similar thing about his first issue of the main book, where I said, oh, there's a lot of things in here I like, but it wasn't this home run of a first issue. It wasn't like Taylor's first Nightwing issue, where it was like, oh, this is the start of a special run. It was like, oh, there's definitely some things in here that I'm not sure about yet, but I'll see. Where he's...
I agree with that. I think I'm more receptive to that with Zdarsky right now, after being at the time I'd read that, it was 6 issues into the night, where I'm like, okay, this has grown quite considerably over this.
Perhaps a more one-to-one fair comparison is that I felt that with the first Daredevil issue he did. I felt, oh, this already feels special. So there was reasonable reasons to have expectations going into that first Batman issue, but
it was. But as of right now, I'm like, okay, I've seen that this can grow into something to be quite a really quite strong book at this point. So I have no reason to doubt his Batman regular book will either.
Yeah, and he'll have more time with that, presumably. I assume it'll go more than 12 issues at least. So,
and this is only 10, so
or 10 even, yeah. All right, what are you giving the Night?
I'm gonna give it an 8.5, which I recognize is probably too high, but that's just because I'm a sucker for this stuff. This exact relationship between these 3 characters. But yeah, I do like it a lot.
I'll probably go 7.5. I think. It's good. I like some of the things that it pokes out with Bruce's character. Yeah, so there you go.